welcome to our Committee on Family, Seniors, and Health. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Carter.
Here.
Senator Lewis. Senator Hudson.
Here.
Senator Nicola.
Here.
Senator Bratton. Senator Nirenberg.
Senator Bratton is having a bill heard this morning, but he'll be down as soon as he is done. So, all right, with that, welcome everyone. We are going to start with our bills. We're going to begin with House Bill 121 with Representative Murphy. Good morning.
Madam Chairman, Committee, I'm thrilled to be here today with some good news. We have a pro-life bill that everybody agrees with. This is our baby box bill extension of what I passed 2 years ago. And just a little background, the baby boxes are rescue boxes that we place in firehouses. And for women that have made a very, very heart and thankful decision that they have reached a point in their life where they made a decision to keep the baby. They didn't abort the baby, but for whatever reason, they are now in a point in life where they now know that they can't give that baby a future, and they've made a very, very difficult decision to give it up. And in the past, what they've done is, we've had a bill which would allow them to take it to any first responder. But in reality, that wasn't happening because it's not oftentimes that the woman actually disposes of the baby. I hate to say that, but they'd give it to their boyfriend or whatever, who would then dispose of it in a horrible place, a dumpster or an alley or something like that. And so there was babies being killed. These baby boxes were developed, and since they were developed in Indiana, that has never happened again. It has happened in Missouri. 3 years ago, we passed this bill. I placed the first one in my district in Melville, and 6 months to the day after we put that box in, a little girl, I choke up every time I think of this, was rescued. She had her first birthday about 3 weeks ago. And I praise the mother more than anything else, because can you imagine, how wonderful it is that she made a decision that her baby should have a bright future that she didn't feel that she could give to it. Having said that, that was the first one, and it's been a year and be 2 years in August that we put it in. Since then, there have been 6 more put into the state, and they were all done with private funding, and we have 3 more that are in the process of being brought into the state. We've also saved a second baby. What this bill does is allows for the state to contribute to that on a matching fund. So they cost about $20,000 to put in. This allows for a fund that would match half of that, about $10,000 upon appropriation. The House has put $250,000 in the current budget for this, so that would accelerate this program, because saving these babies is very important to me, and it's proved to be very, very effective. And it's been bipartisan. It passed out of committee 16-0, passed out of rules 9-0, and more amazingly, it passed out of the House 158-0. So it is truly a bipartisan bill. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Representative Murphy. Can you talk to us a little bit about how many we have in our state? Is it still just the
We
one?
have 6 in the state
6.
right now. 2 of them have just opened up within the last month.
Okay.
There's 2 more in the process, which would be 8. There's going to be a second one in my district, which would be number 9. But this would basically allow for 25 of them to go in next year. I got an email from one of the councilmen in Kansas City, and they're looking at putting in 6 of them. And they're very excited about this bill because we would save save them a lot of money doing
Yeah.
this. So.
No, it's a great bill. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
putting your time and effort into this. And are there any questions for the representative? Go ahead.
Representative, thank you so much for your work on helping to save babies. I appreciate it very much. I do have a few questions
Sure.
about this. So, did I hear you right that each box costs $20,000?
It's about $20,000. It's about $12,000 for the box, and then you have the construction. Of course, you have architectures. There's a lot of requirements on these because they have to be put in an environment where
Temperature.
they're heated and air conditioned. They can't just be put into the side of a building. They have,
Right.
they have to be alarmed. The alarms do two things. They tell the first responders in the building that the box has been activated, but it also dials 911. So if for whatever reason there was nobody in the building, and although the requirement is that be manned at all times. And in the case of the one in Melville, it also, there's a camera inside the box, and our fire chief actually got the video on his phone. And he said he immediately cried when he saw it.
Yeah, I bet. I
So-
bet. So there's 6 boxes now,
Right.
and you have a 7th that is just placed, or?
Well, we got 7. We got 2 more that are in the process of permitting and so forth. So,
Okay.
yeah,
And then Kansas City area wants 6?
they want to do 6.
Yeah, and I'm from that area in Jackson County.
Yeah.
And so to date, so this coming August will be 2 years that you started the
Right.
boxes. And
2 years since we passed the bill.
Okay.
It took probably 7 months after we passed the bill to promulgate all the rules and so forth before they could even get started. So.
Right. And so 2 babies to date have been
Yeah.
placed in the boxes? Okay. Does seem
And I
like
would
we-
tell you that $250,000 to save one baby is
Oh,
well.
yeah. The money's not even
Yeah, it is
the
not
object
important.
when you talk about a human life, especially a baby.
Right.
Absolutely. So your bill wants to extend the time from 45 days to 90 days.
Yes.
Can you speak into that? And do you have any data research of why this would be?
I was looking at other
needed.
states and what they have done, and 30 days is a very short period of time when you're in an emotional time of your life. And I just wanted to give the women a little more time to make their decision, to think it through. That way, for both ends of that. I don't want them rushing into a decision. It's a very tough thing for a woman
Absolutely.
to do. And you give them 30 days, and the original bill allows them to. It's not a final decision. They can still go to the courts and get their baby back if they need to, up for a certain period of time. But and the way the box works is a toll-free number for counseling, both prior to and after the baby has been put into the box. So, but I just thought they needed more time.
Yeah. I guess how would the mother know that it's up to 45 days or 90 days, or how would you know, or how does anybody know that?
Well, I will tell you, the press coverage on this has been great. In fact, I'm doing an interview again on it today. We're going to get the word out.
Yeah. Well, my question is, and it's really a technical one, and it doesn't really even matter, but when you put a day amount of days, time, how is that even regulated?
I don't know how we regulate it now, to be honest with you.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I don't either. Okay. Thank you so much.
Any other questions for the representative? Seeing none. First in favor to testify. How many are here to testify in favor of this bill? How many are here in opposition? How many are here for informational purposes only? Okay, I think we're fine. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Samuel Lee with Campaign Life Missouri, to go on record in support of this wonderful pro-life bill. I would just give a little bit of background. The Safe Places for Newborns Act was first passed in 2002. They've been called safe haven laws, baby Moses laws. Texas was the first state. Every state has one of these laws, and many of them were passed within the first 2 years after Texas did that. We've gone through some changes over the years in terms of where a child can be relinquished. States vary in that regard. Some it's only hospitals. In Missouri, it's in the bill. Hospitals, law enforcement agencies, fire stations, of course, maternity homes, pregnancy resource centers, as long as someone is there. And so this is the change that Representative Murphy passed a few years ago and the legislature passed, added the additional opportunity for these baby boxes. And in terms of the 45 days to 90 days, I will send to the whole committee from, I think it's from Georgetown University. They have a sort of a survey of these laws and of the dates, and they range from a few days to a year. So I think North Dakota is up to a year. 90 days is sort of in the proposal for 90 days is sort of in the middle range, maybe a little bit higher than the average. Averages are 30 to 45, but they can be, as I said, up to a year. 1 or 2 states have that long. I think it's reasonable to extend that. How women would know, that's difficult to say. I mean, there may literally not be someone there at the place when they're relinquished in a baby box, as opposed to handing it over to a firefighter or a maternity home or a hospital or something like that. But got to have some sort of limit in the law.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your time. Next in favor?
Oh, sorry, thank you. My name is Patty Skane. I represent Missouri Right to Life. We're just here in support of House Bill 121. Anything we can do to help women to choose life for their children, especially in the situations we're in now with Amendment 3, is certainly something that we need to pursue, and we thank the sponsor of the bill for bringing this forward.
All right, thank you. Thank you for coming. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, appreciate your time. Next in favor?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Katie Gamble here today on behalf of the Fire Service Alliance. Just want to go on record in support of the legislation. I don't think there's much to add, but we appreciate all the sponsors' work on the legislation.
Great, thanks for being here. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, appreciate your time. Next in favor? Next for informational purposes, just in case. Next in opposition? All right, Representative, any closing comments?
Just thank you for hearing the bill. I hope it can get out quickly. It would be nice if this bill, and I hate to say this because every senator says it to me in committee, it would be nice to get this out clean, because I think it's a statement from the legislature, both Democrat and Republican, that we value the lives of our children.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, we will next go to House Committee Substitute for House Bill 243 and 280 with Representative, is he here?
You said 243?
I did, that's you. This is a relation to the dissolution of marriage or legal separation and pregnancy status. So, Representative, begin when you're ready.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and members of this committee. I appreciate your time and allowing me to present this bill today. This bill is something that's very personal to me. It's regarding my personal story. So I'd love to share why this bill is important, what this bill does, and who this is going to protect. My name is Cecily Williams. I am a state representative, District 111, which is the western portion of Jefferson County. I'm a domestic abuse survivor. I'm here today to offer HB243 to allow a dissolution of marriage while pregnant in the state of Missouri, a right that is currently denied to women. As someone who's lived through the unimaginable, I hope that by sharing my story, I can shed light on the dangerous consequences of forcing women to stay in marriages they no longer feel safe in just because they are pregnant. But first, I also want to describe the unfairness that this law creates in a situation where a wife is unfaithful and becomes pregnant, and the unborn child that they are carrying does not belong to their husband. By state law, her husband is presumed the father and is financially responsible until DNA tests can prove otherwise. I often ask myself why we would punish a soldier that has been overseas for 9 months defending our country and is finally able to come home just to find out that his wife is 5 months pregnant. Under Missouri law, he too is unable to finalize the divorce and release him from the financial responsibility of caring for a child. But even more importantly, this law can prevent a woman from making the most impossible decision to sacrifice her unborn child's life to save her own and lawfully free herself from her abuser and finalize her divorce. I understand all too well the complexities of leaving an abusive marriage, especially when pregnant. The emotional, mental, and physical toll that abuse takes on a person is overwhelming, and the fear of what might happen if you try to leave is paralyzing. I know what it feels like to be hit, manipulated, and controlled by the person who is supposed to protect you. I know the pain of enduring violence while carrying a child, all while trying to shield my other children from the horrors they witnessed. Domestic abuse does not always look the same, but one thing remains constant: the fear, the isolation, and the manipulation. The person who is supposed to love you and protect you becomes the one who causes your pain. In my case, I was physically, emotionally, and mentally abused. I will never forget the day that my husband hit me in the face with a baseball bat while my 7-year-old child hid terrified in the corner. I was blamed for his anger and rage, made to feel like I had caused it, yet I knew the truth. I wasn't the cause of the violence, that he was. Like many survivors of domestic violence, I finally reached a point where I had the courage to leave my line in the sand. I knew I needed to protect myself, and I needed to protect my children. But under Missouri law, I was not only unable to dissolve my marriage while pregnant, my specific county wouldn't even let me file for divorce, even though I had a lawful will that stated that I could. The emotional, psychological, and physical pain I endured didn't stop just because I was carrying a child. And now I was left to grapple with the realities of staying in a marriage that was toxic and dangerous. It was 7 long months until I was finally granted the ability to file for divorce, and my newborn baby was 10 days old. On June 26th of that year, after I'd already filed for divorce, I received 37 missed phone calls from my husband. I had refused to answer them, knowing the threats and the unwanted manipulative messages he left behind. He alternated between professing his love for me and threatening me, demanding that I meet up with him and our 4 children. I had no idea what the next day would hold, but I felt like the weight of the situation was pushing me further into fear and uncertainty. You see, he was going to prison for 5 years due to a drunk driving accident that he had caused and critically injured 2 people, one of them being a 16-year-old girl. Because he was such an upstanding citizen, he was afforded 6 weeks to get his personal affairs in order before he was required to start serving his prison sentence, which was supposed to be the next day. However, on that day, I received a phone call that changed everything. My husband did not show up to court for the start of his prison sentence. He had actually taken his own life, just 11 days prior to my divorce finalization. In his suicide note, he stated that he would never give me anything I wanted or deserved. He declared that I would never get the satisfaction of being divorced from him, but that now I would forever be his widow. He left to find peace and left me and our 4 children, who were 7, 5, 2, and 6 months old, in pieces. I was a very young 25 years old at this time. I firmly believe that on the day prior to my husband taking his own life, his plan was to take mine and my children's lives. The threats and the phone calls all pointed to that conclusion, but the most painful part was yet to come. Since I was still legally married to him, I was left responsible for his final expenses. I was burdened with the financial obligation for the costs associated with his death, a man who had caused me so much pain and whose action had put my life in danger. It's hard to articulate the grief and the guilt, the disbelief that I felt in that moment. I had to navigate the loss of a man who had abused me, a man who chose to take his own life, and in doing so, forced me into a position where I was financially responsible for his choices. The bill before you today is not just a legal technicality. It can be a matter of life and death. When a woman is trapped in an abusive marriage, the risk of further harm is ever present. The law should not force her to remain in a situation where she is at risk both emotionally and physically, and this bill that seeks to allow the dissolution of marriage during pregnancy offers women like me a chance to not only escape the control of their abuser, but also the legal obligations that kept them bound in that dangerous relationship. Nobody should be forced to stay married for even a moment longer that is absolutely necessary. Someone once asked me, what's worse, loving someone you can't have or having someone you can't love? And the truth is, it's neither of these that reflect the real struggle. The real pain lies in leaving someone you can't unlove. Someone whose hands left scars, scars that remained long after the physical wounds have healed. The real hurt is knowing that the man who caused you so much pain is gone, and yet the pieces of your life are shattered in his wake, but you feel free. Healing from domestic abuse is an ongoing journey. It requires strength, resilience, and the will to move forward. Also away from the man who once held you captive. But healing is possible, and for many of us, it starts with the courage to walk away. Please help me make that walk away not be so difficult. We should not be forced to endure any more than we already have. We deserve the ability to heal fully and to rebuild our lives, free from the person who destroyed us. I urge you to support this bill. Like I said earlier, it's not just a matter of legal technicalities. It's about the lives of women and children and men who have been subjected to abuse. It is about offering survivors like me the chance to find safety, honoring the victims who were unable to find that, to begin healing, and to reclaim the life that was stolen from them. No woman should be forced to stay in a dangerous, abusive marriage because the law keeps her legally bound to a man who doesn't care for her well-being. This bill protects men from being lawfully and financially responsible for a child they didn't create while in a marriage with their wife. I appreciate your time and your commitment to making Missouri a safer place for women and children. Thank you. I'll take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Representative, for bringing this bill forward. I hope that, I'm very sympathetic to your story and what you shared, and being vulnerable in such a public fashion is not an easy thing. And so thank you for your courage. I hope that you find some healing in this process. And as a colleague, I appreciate everything you're doing. So
I appreciate
thank you. Any
that.
questions
Thank
for this witness? Senator?
Madam Chairwoman and Representative, I just want to echo your sentiments. Thank you so much for your bravery and for your courage. The fact that you're here in your first legislative session with such an important piece of legislation, willing to share your story to ensure that others never have to live that reality. I'm grateful for you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Senator Nicola.
And I will do that the same, is just echo the sentiments that were both from my colleagues here and the chairwoman. But I also want to thank you for taking the time to come to my office and sharing your personal story, and thank you again for sharing it again today. And I really thank you for bringing this, even awareness of this issue to me and how important this really is. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Any other questions for the representative? Seeing none. Those in favor of testifying, can you raise your hand? Okay. Any opposed? Any for informational purposes only? All right. Thank you. We'll begin with our first witness in favor.
Thank you. My name is Maggie Olivia. I'm here on behalf of Abortion Action Missouri, just going in support and echoing the comments of the members. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
Any questions for that witness? Seeing none. Thank you. Next in favor.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Sarah Schlemer here on behalf of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. We would love to see this bill go into effect. If you have ever been pregnant and gone to an OB office, you will see on a lot of the backs of the doors or in bathroom stalls, you'll see like if you are in a domestic violence situation, if you don't feel safe, here's where you can get help. We want to make sure they can actually get the help they need and leave the situations that they want to have a healthier pregnancy and then more so healthier motherhood after that. So strong support of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, appreciate your time. Next in favor?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, good morning. My name is Angela Hirsch. I'm the Executive Director for Rape and Abuse Crisis Service here in Jefferson City. We're a nonprofit dual victim service organization serving survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking in a 9-county area here in central Missouri. For the last almost 5 years, I've had the pleasure of serving as the Executive Director of RACS, but I've been working with survivors of domestic and sexual violence for more than 30 years. Over the last nearly 5 years at RACS, we've had 14 babies born in shelter. Those babies whose mothers were forced into shelter because they needed a safe place to stay because it was not safe for them to stay at home. Each of these new mothers reported that the abuse they had suffered from their partner escalated or became more violent during their pregnancy. And this is not at all unusual. When we're dealing with a power and control issue amongst intimate partners, pregnancy is often a tool that is used as a weapon from an abuser to the abused. Pregnancy is used to trap women into abusive marriages, abusive relationships, and they often feel like they have no way out. Agencies like mine are there to provide support, provide help, provide guidance, advocacy, shelter, and safety, but we cannot go above and beyond what the law allows us to do. And too often I have seen women trapped in marriages they cannot get out of simply because they are pregnant. Experiencing domestic violence during pregnancy increases the likelihood of complications and poor health, not only for the mother, but also for the baby. Women who are abused during pregnancy are more likely to receive absolutely no prenatal care, delayed care until later in their pregnancy, because their abuser is controlling their access to the prenatal and health care that they need. Maternal exposure to domestic violence is associated with significant increased risk of low birth weight, preterm birth, and infants who are exposed to domestic violence can show signs of trauma that include problems eating, problems sleeping, disturbances at higher irritability, and delays in their development. Too often, I have seen battered women who are controlled emotionally, physically, financially, and legally by their abusive spouse. The fact that pregnancy status gives courts pause in finalizing a divorce status just extends that control and places vulnerable survivors in greater danger. I fully support this bill, and I commend Representative Williams for her courage and for bringing this issue forward and giving a voice to the thousands of survivors that I have the honor to serve. If a court determines that there remains no reasonable likelihood that a marriage can be preserved, pregnancy status should not prevent the court from entering a judgment of dissolution. This bill provides judges the options to finalize a divorce and help prevent abusive partners from controlling access to safety and care for both mom and baby. I appreciate your consideration of this bill. I hope for your support of this bill. And as the representative said, please help us keep the women and children of Missouri safe. I thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So you said you've been doing this for about 30 years?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that right? Are you seeing any decrease in your numbers?
No, ma'am. We are seeing a great increase in our numbers. Domestic violence, I'm not going to say it's on the rise, I am going to say that it is much more evident and more people are willing to come forward today than they were in the past. We speak out about domestic violence much more today than we did 30 years ago. It's no longer a nasty little secret that we sweep under the rug. And I think because of that, more people are willing to seek help from organizations like RACS. I will tell you that Missouri has the 3rd highest rate of domestic violence in the nation, and we have the 6th highest rate of domestic violence homicide in the nation.
Are there any indications as what are some of the contributing factors to those numbers?
There are several. Part of it are some of the laws that we have in our state. Part of it is a mindset of tradition, if you would. In many areas, in many families, women are viewed as property. And it takes generation after generation after generation to change that mindset. Access to services like RACS has become more and more available, but our funding is becoming less and less available. And running an organization that houses abused women and children. Nobody told me when I took this job it'd be like running a second household, which is a lot what it's like. And although shelter is probably our most expensive service, it is by far the least that we do when you put into an account our advocacy, our counseling, our outreach work to try and reach survivors that may not necessarily need shelter. It's a 24/7, 365 type of job, and they are services that are needed throughout our state. And people being able to access those services when you're dealing with issues like financial issues, transportation issues, access, on top of trying to escape a controlling partner can be very, very difficult.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness?
Ma'am, I want to thank you so much for the work that you do.
It is my pleasure.
You said Missouri's the 3rd highest domestic violence?
We have the 3rd highest rate of domestic violence in the nation, yes,
Okay.
sir.
And then you said the 6th highest, and I missed that. The 6th highest, what was that?
Homicide rate
Homicide. Thank you.
for domestic violence victims, yes, sir.
Thanks again for your testimony and for all your work.
It's hard to sit here and listen to all of these statistics, honestly. So
I know.
Can I add also that 84% of all pregnancy-related deaths is due to domestic violence?
That is true.
So I'm just going to add, this is a side note, but I feel it kind of bubbling up inside of me. I have one daughter who's married. I had a very frank conversation with him before he married her. It is not their father that they need to fear. It would be their mother.
Yes.
If I ever got a phone call that she was being mistreated. Anyway, so it's hard to sit here and listen to those statistics. I'm sorry. Any other questions for the
understand.
witness?
Yes, ma'am.
Just like Senator, I hear your passion. I think that there's several things that the women senators like try to work on, and these statistics are alarming, and I wasn't aware. And I just want to, I mean, we're kind of winding down this session. I think this bill will pass and everything, but I think I want to be committed to work to this is horrific.
I appreciate
So-
that, Senator, and please note anything. The nice thing about being local is that I am local.
Okay.
And I can be a resource for you as well as our statewide coalition, who you'll hear from in a moment. But yes, I completely agree. These statistics are horrific. We are better than this. And our women and our children deserve better.
Absolutely.
Can you make sure that you leave your contact information with one of us?
Yes,
I mean,
ma'am.
I would love to, at least for myself, be able to use you as a resource as we move forward. So,
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next in favor?
Good Good morning. My name is Cheryl Robb Welch, and I'm the CEO of the Missouri Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. We're a statewide membership association comprised of domestic and sexual violence providers, much like the one that you just heard from. Madam Chairwoman and Congressman, members of the committee, thank you for your time, and I am here today to express our support for House Bill 243 and to show appreciation for the bill's sponsor, Representative Williams. Angela has already spoke a great deal of much of the comments that I would have made already, but I will add that pregnancy can be an especially risky time, as already has been spoken to, for women experiencing domestic violence. And as many women report, that abuse started and intensified while they were pregnant. Domestic violence has been identified as one of the leading causes of death in pregnancy-associated mortality reviews by our own Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services. So the statistics bear that out. So we are in full support of HB 243 and would encourage you to do so as well.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, appreciate your time and being here. Next in favor? Next, we'll move. That concludes those in favor. Anybody here to testify against? Just making sure. Though it might be a rough crowd for you. Anyone here for informational purposes only? Thank you. Representative, again, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. Anyway, it's difficult to even say here, so I can't imagine having to have lived through it. Do you have any closing comments?
Just that I appreciate everyone who came to testify in support. It's really difficult. I know that abusers know their laws, even though they're breaking them, and they will do whatever they can to keep their victims in their control. And I don't think at 25 I ever imagined having 4 children. But I can say that this law does a disservice to women because their abusers know that if they're pregnant, they can't leave. So that's all. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know you have another hearing this morning also, so I want to be cognizant of your time. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yep. I just, and this may have been mentioned when I had stepped out, but it's a pretty remarkable morning when we can start our morning with 2 bills that have tremendous support. Representative Murphy's passed out of the House unanimously, which is not an easy task, and Representative Williams' bill also passed out of the House unanimously. So that is a tremendous testament to your work.
Thank you.
And I am so grateful, Madam Chairwoman, for granting this hearing this morning, and I really hope we can get this across the finish line. So
I hope so too. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you. All right, that concludes the hearing for House Committee Substitute House Bill 243 and 280. We will now hear from Senator Fitzwater on SJR57. Senator, begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. State Senator Travis Fitzwater, 10th District, and bringing before you Senate Joint Resolution 57, obviously a little bit late in the game, but wanted to have a conversation on what this looks like across our state and put before the voters a decision point on how we're going to protect women in our state, in prisons, in schools, bathrooms, locker rooms, sports, and so they can decide whether or not biological males should be in these spaces. These mostly should be very private spaces for women, and that's the heart of it. And so I think we should put this before the Missourians, and they should decide whether or not we want our publicly funded spaces to be filled with biological males that should be for biological females. And I think that's the heart of it.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for our Senator? Thanks.
Thank you, Senator, for bringing this piece of legislation to the committee, and I just appreciate all your work in it, so thank you.
Thanks, Senator.
Any other questions?
Good morning. We had a great moment of unity here, Senator, and then you had to go and ruin it. But
Such is the way of this
but
place.
But it's not the first, is it?
Won't be the last either.
Well, there's that. I obviously, no surprise, right? I don't like this for numerous reasons, but I'm going to just jump into some real basic ones. We have, I think, made some important strides in recent years in having shared spaces for restrooms that simply makes sense. I'm a mom with 3 boys. You're a dad with 3 girls, right? One of the things that I think is interesting is when I, travel to the Kansas City airport, for example. It's a wonderful thing that I can be there in the stalls where you have your sinks that you share, like many of our restaurants anymore. We go in there, I know where my kids are, they come out. That's a great thing. I was with my kindergartner over spring break, and we were at a space that didn't have a family restroom. And you know what? I wasn't going to have, my 6-year-old came with me, so a 6-year-old little boy. So I was looking at this and I thought, well, gosh, there's be all sorts of lawsuits about this, because could my 6-year-old boy come into the restroom with me? The women's restroom?
Yeah, I think there's a very clear, I think that we're trying to create a very clear distinction in publicly funded places.
But again, that language is not clear in your legislation.
Well, let's talk about how we fix it.
Okay. So there's a whole, I was hoping we were past bathroom bills, but apparently here we are again.
Well, this isn't just bathroom. This is prisons, it's locker rooms. There's several spaces in here that we outline.
Again, I was hoping we were going to be past this, but here we are again. So obviously, if this continues, we'll have a robust conversation going on.
Sure.
But those were, even some of my initial things. I thought, how would this impact me and my family moving forward? So thanks.
Any other questions for the senator? Seeing none, thank you so much, Senator, for bringing this forward. Anybody here to testify in favor of the bill? Thank you. Please come forward.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Dr. Guillermo Villatrueba for the Missouri Catholic Conference, and we would like to go on the record in support of SJR57 and commend Senator Fitzwater for sponsoring the bill. The Missouri Catholic Conference supports this bill because it would allow the voters to amend the state constitution in order to ensure that fundamental safety and privacy standards for both men and women are guaranteed in certain spaces. And we all know that there are certain spaces that, because of their nature, should not be shared with persons of the opposite sex. For instance, those where disrobing or intimate bodily functions occurs, and where respect for legitimate privacy must be considered in close connection with decency and modesty. Also, those spaces where it's not safe to be around persons of the opposite sex, such as prisons, jails, and correctional centers, or even certain sports teams where the fairness of the competition would be jeopardized if they were not sex separated. As Pope Francis explains in his apostolic exhortation, Amoris Laetitia, quote, "We cannot separate the masculine and the feminine from God's work of creation, which is prior to all of our decisions and experiences, and where biological elements exist which are impossible to ignore," unquote. Designating certain spaces as sex separated would protect the dignity of both males and females, uphold justice and the common good, and ensure that our laws comport with a proper understanding of human nature. SJR57 is the vehicle for Missouri voters to enshrine this in the Constitution. We urge you to vote do pass on this bill, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to take them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Senator?
Just real quickly,
Yeah.
Missouri Catholic Conference, it's always interesting when you all choose to testify on bills, and I say this as a cradle Catholic, practicing Catholic. There are so many pieces of legislation where I don't see your presence, but as soon as we get to one of these topics, you're here. And that's what I find maddening. Did you testify in opposition to the bounty hunter bill?
Yes, I did. It
Okay.
was myself personally who testified in
good. I'm
opposition.
glad to hear that. Have you testified in support of the many bipartisan pieces of legislation to bring folks health care?
Yes, we shall testify on those as well. For instance, yesterday I testified in favor of expanding the sunset provision for the diaper banks tax credit.
Okay. You will continue to pick and choose the pieces of legislation. There are so many pieces of legislation that, again, I think are incredibly bipartisan, and I find it very frustrating, even talking with some of my Catholic priests, that the role that you all are choosing to have on these pieces of legislation that I think further divide us. I always find it interesting when we pick and choose what to quote from whether it's the Catechesis or from Pope Francis, but I'll leave with the words of Pope Francis when he says, "Who am I to judge?" Thank you.
Well, Senator, that is not magisterial teaching. That is just
Those are the words of Pope Francis.
A
Thank
quote
you.
from an interview, but I appreciate your opinion, and we will continue being nonpartisan and testifying in everything that protects the dignity of the human person.
Go ahead, Senator Lewis.
Thank you. Yeah, good morning.
Morning.
You just said human person, and I was raised Catholic as well. And from my, upbringing, Jesus was an example. He loved and embraced the outcasts, the prostitutes, the lepers. And you just said that you're here to protect and testify in support of all persons, but really that just means straight people.
Well, no, because I don't see how that would affect, for instance, a gay person or a lesbian person from just using the facilities that comport to their sex. I really don't see how this is just for straight people.
Have you read the bill?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next. Anybody have any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anyone else here to testify in favor? That concludes testimony in favor. Anybody here to testify in opposition? Okay, first come forward. Yep.
Hello, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. My name is Charlie Adams, and I have degrees from the University of Nebraska in biochemistry and biology with minors in mathematics, chemistry, and humanities and medicine. And I'm also a fourth-year medical student, graduating as a physician in May. Also, I am an out and proud transgender man, which for me means that I was assigned female at birth, raised in a very Catholic household, and then raised as a girl, and then transitioned to male in my early 20s. So the main thing with this bill is that it conflicts with the teachings on medical boards. There's 5 categories that define sex. Those are internal sex organs, external sex organs, hormones, chromosomes, and epigenetics. And if we're going to define sex by those 5 things, if we're going to change any of those, which 4 of those categories are changeable, then you can't say that sex is therefore unchangeable. Basic biology is not always applicable to medicine, and we see this in most fields when it comes to graduate level education. Things that you learn as basics in engineering courses, chemistry courses, are often disproved as you go further along in your education, and medicine is included in that as well. Being gay was also once a mental illness until just a couple decades ago when medicine did a lot of research and realized that sometimes people are just gay. And that doesn't imply anything about who they are. They used to assign nefarious intent to gay people, but today we probably all know at least one gay person, and that's something that society realizes now isn't really a huge problem, and we don't discriminate against gay people as strongly as we once did just a couple decades ago based on stigma. Likewise, being transgender was also once listed as a mental illness, but that has also been removed as medicine has done more research and found out that, again, sometimes people are just trans, and we shouldn't automatically assign nefarious intent to people because of who they are or how they were born. I want to contribute to society. And assigning nefarious intent to me just because of who I am, and then creating laws that specifically aim to push me out of contributing to society and push us onto the fringes is not helping us to do that. Also, if you want to protect women and girls, then I don't see how requiring me to use the women's restroom is going to do that. A law can't just apply to only certain people. So some people will say, well, we just want trans women in the men's restroom, but you can still use the men's restroom. But again, that's completely discriminatory. You have to apply a law equally across the board, which means that I have to use the women's restroom if you pass this. Also, trans people already face very high rates of violence, and being forced to use the restroom that does not align with who we are increases those rates of violence. So again, do you think it's going to be safer for me to go in the men's restroom or to go in the women's restroom? And which one do you think is going to cause more panic and feelings of unsafety among people? I hugely respect your expertise as lawmakers and what you do for our state, but I do not respect your expertise as doctors because you haven't been to medical school. So please don't make laws that go against what all major medical organizations in the world, led by the world's leading physicians, have declared is medical fact nowadays. Please leave that to the experts. And please let me focus on my job, being a student and serving patients, because that's all I want to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the witness?
I don't appreciate the way you just spoke to us. All right? I don't have to be a doctor. I'm not a lot of things, but I was elected to make laws. All right? And I make laws based on truth. And my truth is the Word of God, Scripture. When God created one man and one woman, that's my truth.
Respectfully, I personally don't think it's appropriate to make laws based off of religion. We should make them based
That's
off
fine,
of
but I'm not going to listen
helping the community.
to doctors either that say one thing that disagrees with the God of creation. Or your schooling, or whatever is being said out there. Because there's all kinds of things out there that are being said. If we don't have morals, we don't have guidelines by the God that created us, then we're left to our own decisions to believe what we want to believe. And I refuse to do that.
Yeah, I will say, as somebody who was formerly raised in a very strict Catholic household who's read the Bible over 10 times, there's also statements in the Bible saying that you can't touch pigskin, which would equate to football. You can't get tattoos. And
That's Old Testament. When Jesus came and he was crucified and rose from the dead, everything changed. If you want to have a theological debate, we can, but this is not the appropriate place.
It really isn't. Yes,
That's right.
Separation
But
of
if you want
state
to,
and
if you
church.
want to kind of berate me a little bit by saying we should listen to what the doctors have to say, what your schooling has to say, over what the Scripture has to say, it's not happening with me. Thank you for your testimony.
I think I probably prefaced my comments to the senator just recognizing that this was going to bring up some intense emotions, as they always do. I first want to thank you for being here and for sharing your story. I have been in the legislature for 5 years, and I was a teacher before that. I have a lot of different training. I was certified in multiple areas, went to school for a long time, almost until the time that I came into the legislature, quite frankly. And one of the things that I recognize for many years working on education policy is really encouraging my colleagues to listen to the educators and appreciate their training and the importance of letting teachers train to the full scope of their training and have the autonomy to practice their craft without being handcuffed by legislation. I think many times when we are on bills that are quite frankly over my scope of training, whether it is something on judicial proceedings and having to rely on attorneys or judges to provide guidance, there are so many different instances where I say, you know what, this is a bill that is impacting CAFOs. I know nothing about this. Let me talk to the farmers and to the veterinarians that see the livestock in those facilities, for example, right? I think that's the whole point of the hearing process. One of the things that I continue to have concerns about is the push of legislation that I feel clearly does not respect the separation of church and state. And I think this is another example of that. And there have been many examples of that just this year alone. This is not the first time any witness or has shared, whether it's in the House or the Senate, really ask that we rely on experts to help guide us. And I think that's what the whole hearing process is about. So again, thank you. No matter what issue we're on, this committee always seems to have robust conversations, and that is the makeup of the General Assembly, right? We come from all walks of life, and we have to respect each other from different walks of life. I don't share the exact same beliefs as other colleagues on here, but I respect them, and I respect them as duly elected officials that are here to serve the people, and that's what this process is all about. So I appreciate the robust dialogue, but I also, I see you, and I hear you, and I thank you.
I will add in just a comment. I think you were in my office previously, and we had a very healthy conversation. It's interesting to me, just from my worldview and perspective, that these conversations sometimes get lost in a transgender, non-transgender situation where we seem polarized. When I think the senator's underlying concern is that kids are being targeted in bathrooms, whether or not we want to admit that there is some situations where they are targeted when they're in a locker room or they're in a bathroom, and there is fear of a parent sending their kid in alone in the opposite sex bathroom and what will happen to them. So if I can just kind of reel this back in and not make it about the transgender issue, but about the safety of citizens, I think that's the underlying intent of the senator. And so I appreciate your testimony, but would like to kind of refocus back on the fact that people are being targeted also when they go in to use a bathroom, and there's somebody who goes in to use it and to cause harm. So I think that's the intent. Senator, don't mean to speak for you, but
I mean, I don't want to jump in on someone's testimony, but I will say, there have been movements nationally with the executive order and things like that force certain policies in prisons, in particular, that are concerning to have to expose women in vulnerable situations to assault, which I can give you story after story on that. So there is an intent to protect, and that is the underlying desire, for sure.
thank you for the clarity, and thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Senator Lewis.
Hi, Charlie.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I appreciate your testimony and the bill sponsor. I think it's clear, with the first two bills that we heard, I think there's a commitment around domestic violence. I think it's worth sharing with the committee that transgender people experience greater domestic violence than, I don't know if you have that statistics on the top of your head.
I don't, but that is true.
Yeah. And that members of LGBTQ are 4 times likely to attempt to commit suicide. And I appreciate the bill sponsor wanting to protect children. I think that when we look at the letter of the law, we have to look at the unintended consequences, which you're here to testify in support of, and I appreciate that. And when we look at this, and you're talking about medical, the bill here talks about that gender and sex is determined by biology at the time of conception, but we know, in the medical, there's research, it doesn't. It's 6 weeks after. You've got your XX chromosomes until 6 weeks into gestation. So I appreciate you coming here, and, is there anything you wanted to add?
I suppose the biggest thing is just that I don't think, so we'll all agree that we want to protect women and girls. We want to protect anyone vulnerable in our society. And I think that this bill is very focused around fear of an idea of a community that people don't understand, and that this problem, specifically when it comes to trans people doing the things that we're trying to protect people against, that's not existent. Yet the number of trans people I know who have been attacked in the bathroom is very high, and it will get a lot higher if, again, I need to go into the women's restroom. Mm-hmm. And if that becomes law, then I will. So I'll see you in the women's restroom then here, which I really don't want to do, but if I need to follow the law, then I guess I would do that. I really just want to serve my community, I want to practice medicine, and then I want to go home like everyone else, and this law is inhibiting me from doing that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for your testimony. And again, I thank you for the conversation we had in my office. And I hope we can kind of wrestle through this together. I do believe that it's just for the safety of everyone, so thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, in opposition.
Whenever you're ready, ma'am.
I'm sure. I'm Jennifer Pepper from St. Charles, and I'm here to oppose Senate Joint Resolution 57. In the early morning of August 6, 2023, I was the victim of a sexual assault. Not in a public restroom or a locker room, not by a man pretending to be a woman to get close to me. I was just in public at the wrong place at the wrong time, and I met the wrong guy. On August 2nd, 2024, Representative Sparks held a press conference. One trans woman used the women's locker room at a gym, and it made international news. People like me were painted as an inherent danger to women and children, and both Sparks and the Attorney General swore to do something about it, and here we are. Yes, people like me. I was supposed to be a boy. At least that's what everyone told me I was. If you have questions about that, so do I. I didn't get puberty blockers. Whatever my puberty was, I went through it unmedicated starting in the 90s. It certainly succeeded in halting my growth. I have an appointment with a doctor who's supposed to help me figure out what's going on with my biology at the time of conception. Right now, that's an open medical question. I don't even know the answer. But I do know what you see here and now, and we all know there's no way I'm getting away with using men's locker rooms. There is no public safety reason to force me to use men's bathrooms. There is no public safety reason to force me to use men's locker rooms. There is no public safety reason to house me in men's prisons. There is no legitimate reason to keep me out of women's domestic violence shelters or rape crisis centers. In fact, the only legitimate reason to keep me out of women's athletics is my presence would be an insult to the actually good female athletes. Please don't make me become the poster child for why these laws are bad ideas. Please vote no on Senate Joint Resolution 57. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next, and you can begin just as soon as you're ready.
Good morning, Senators. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us this morning. My name is Ben Green. I'm a St. Louis resident, and I'm here to testify in opposition to SJR57. I am also a transgender man, so I was assigned female at birth, spent the first 15 years of my life living as a very uncomfortable woman, though in my day-to-day life, that is not something people can tell about me pretty regularly. I've got a beard, a deep voice, broader shoulders, and I feel most comfortable using the men's bathroom. Under SJR57, where would you like me to go, as other people have testified about? And further, how do you plan to enforce this bill? Would you like to have someone check my genitals at the door? Will that keep us safe? Or should I bring a printed copy of my medical records with me for privacy? In states that have passed bathroom bans like this one, they have found them to be nearly impossible to enforce, wasting government time and resources on, as the Utah State Auditor said, becoming the bathroom police and spending hours wading through over 12,000 bogus tips, his words, to their tip line. There was not a single actual instance found that was acted upon. Almost everyone who has been legitimately accused of being a transgender person in a bathroom and subsequently harassed or had the police called on them or had a report filed against them has not been transgender at all. It's been a woman who is tall, maybe a lesbian who has short hair, or a kid who people can't tell what their gender identity is. Marjorie Taylor Greene gathered a crowd to chase a woman into the bathroom to say, "You're transgender, you're breaking the law." She was not transgender, and Marjorie Taylor Greene had to hold an apology press conference for assuming she was, because she wasn't sure how she looked. As it turns out, people are shockingly bad at being able to actually guess who is and is not transgender, and all women will be less safe for that. Senators, we already have laws about what people can and can't do in a bathroom. We have stalls with doors. We have rules about what conduct is and is not appropriate. This isn't going to just say, okay, if we allow transgender people to go into the bathroom, they can do whatever they want. We have other rules that people are already following. And in any area that has passed inclusive bathroom laws, they have not seen any increase in bathroom-related assaults connected to trans identities. We have laws to keep us safe, and this is not that. This bill is the latest in a long, long string of kicking the political football for as many points as you can rather than solve the real issues facing Missourians, including the very real safety concerns faced by the women of our state. I hope one day I will not have to come down here and ask you to take the target off of our backs and to start helping your constituents, but for now, I just ask you to vote no on this bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness? Senator Nuremberg.
Thank you for your testimony. You know, you brought something up that is really important. I've thought about this many times as we've had different pieces of legislation move through the process. Is the key question, how would this be enforced? And again, you know, I mentioned to the senator, if this gets further on the floor, obviously we'll have very robust conversations about this. But how do we enforce this? I'm already concerned about a lot of very grave things that are happening in our state, whether it comes to the Office of the Attorney General is tasked with really combating human trafficking and child sex trafficking and all the very, very serious things that are happening across our state that, again, have incredible bipartisan support to make sure that we put an end to those type of things. Anything that would distract, if something like this were to pass, that all of that time and resources to take to enforce something like this would just be insane, quite frankly, and really just you know, when you said who's in charge of this, so, you know, in the state, all of a sudden we're going to have I guess some department, a Department of Health and Senior Service, we're going to have a chief inspector of genitalia. I'm not being facetious when I say this, right? Like, how else are you going to enforce this, right? So here you go. This is what we're doing, and that's my frustration. There's so much important, really good work that we could be doing, and this is a distraction. So thank you.
Absolutely. I know a number of women who have been harassed in states with bathroom bills, none of them transgender, just women who have broader shoulders or who happen to have short hair and have had people physically assault them because they say, I can't believe there's a transgender in the bathroom with me. And it's just because people are all assigning themselves these bounty hunters or vigilantes, and everyone is less safe for it. There are so many bigger problems. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
Senator Lewis.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just want to kind of just add that I hope one day you don't have to come back here. Not that I don't want to see you, but, you know, to testify on issues like this. And I think just to add to what the senator said, you know, I'm part of, government efficiency committee, and, you know, we've heard today that we're third in the country for domestic violence. You know, we've got, you know, we are the breeding ground for child marriage, which we're trying to address with some bipartisan legislation. You know, leading the country in gun violence, bottom with public health care funding. So, yes, there's so much opportunity and good work we should be focused on, and I hope, you know, that we can move past this and continue some of the bipartisan stuff like we heard just this morning. So
yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you.
And next, and you can begin whenever you're ready.
Hi, thank you for letting us share our stories. My name's Heather Walter McCabe, and I'm here to testify in opposition to SJR57. While I'm here in my personal capacity, I'm also an associate professor at the St. Louis University School of Law, where I do research on the impact of public policy on public health. And part of my research is looking at how this impacts LGBTQ communities, including transgender and non-binary communities. We know through research that bathroom bans historically have not been shown to be effective in reducing violence. And just to be clear, I actually am turning this in, and I have citations for all of the things that I'm saying if you have any interest. In fact, places with non-discrimination bills protecting bathroom access have not seen any associated safety risks or increases in violence. In April 2016, around the time of the passed but later rescinded bathroom ban in North Carolina, about 250 domestic violence and sexual assault organizations signed a statement calling for an end to such bathroom bans. There are only 5 states with comparable bans in place in the U.S., 2 of which have not yet gone into effect. Montana's law went into effect just days ago and already has been challenged in court. It's highly likely that Missouri will also face costly litigation, costing money that could be used on infrastructure, schools, or other important priorities for the state. And I share the concern about the enforcement mechanisms and the cost of doing that. This cost could be avoided by doing the right thing for not only transgender folks in Missouri, but for our population at large, using that tax money for something that helps all of the people in our state. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness?
Oh, sorry. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Any others in opposition? Seeing none. Okay. And you can begin whenever you're ready. And thanks, everybody, for filling out your witness forms and putting them on the table. Appreciate that.
Thank you. My name is Maggie Olivia. I'm here today representing Abortion Action Missouri in opposition to this bill. I fully agree with all of the witnesses in opposition ahead of me, and I won't restate what they've said. Instead, I want to share my own personal experience as a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, as a person who has experienced sexual violence as a young child. I think, as you mentioned earlier, Senator Lewis, we spent a lot of time this morning talking about domestic and sexual violence and the high rates that women and girls in the state of Missouri experience. And I can tell you that after my own experience, after I started seeking therapy and resources and support, I began to learn a lot about statistics and patterns and what it looks like for people who experience this type of violence as children. And I can tell you that children who do experience sexual and domestic violence are experiencing violence at the hands of people that they know, oftentimes people that they love, oftentimes the people in their own families, family friends, teachers, coaches, people within close proximity to them. I can tell you that children who experience sexual and domestic violence are most likely to experience that at home at the hands of a trusted adult. And I am not aware of a single incident of a Missouri child experiencing violence or sexual violence by a stranger in a public bathroom. I think you've heard examples already of transgender Missourians who have experienced violence from cis Missourians trying to use the bathroom. We heard a lot of statistics earlier today, and we heard from folks who work in domestic and sexual violence prevention and work to support victims. And I guarantee you that they have a lot of suggestions and work for this committee and body that could be done to support victims and survivors of sexual and domestic violence. And that this is not one of them and will indeed, as stated before me, put all women and girls at further risk when trying to use the bathroom. And if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer that.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. And begin when you're ready.
Good morning. My name is David Lee Brush. I'm with the Missouri Equity Education Partnership. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this morning. We are also in opposition to this bill. Our concerns have largely been covered. I don't think that the language of this resolution is sufficient to be able to provide clarity in situations that would involve schools. Going to the restroom is something that you can't deny. You have to go when you have to go. And in schools, you're already limited in sometimes when you can use the restroom, and there's scheduled times and things. And even schools with very liberal restroom policies, you know, there's still some limitations. And if the limitation is now I don't know which restroom to use, and I'm a transgender student in middle school who doesn't want to go to the restroom during the regular passing time because I might be targeted by people, that's going to limit things even further. And that provides this giant equity gap for our students. And logistically speaking, when we have sporting events that are a boys basketball tournament or a girls' basketball tournament, very often those locker rooms that are boys and girls' locker rooms signs are put up, and now they are single gender places, because otherwise you'll never get through the tournament. Okay, so now under this bill, can we even do that? Can we change a men's bathroom into a women's bathroom during a theatrical event? Because if you've ever been to the Miller Center here in town during a theatrical event, there's not enough women's restroom places. And so as soon as the men are finished, the line is down, we throw up a sign and say, please use the men's bathroom. But can we do that under this bill? The language is really not very clear in this. I've been coming here for 4 years. This is my 4th session. This is, I don't know, my umpteenth, or my son would say my 11th time testifying about something to do with targeting the transgender students, transgender community. And my experience with transgender, I'm a cisgendered heterosexual woman. My experience with my transgender students, my transgender friends, is that they just want to live their lives. They want to use the restroom when they use the restroom, and they want to do their business, wash their hands, and leave. And that's all they are people. They are human beings. Transgender women are women. They are more likely to face more violence in a men's prison than they are in a women's prison. And so if we want to keep saying that we want to do this bill to keep people safe, then we have to acknowledge that this bill is going to not keep transgender people safe. And that we have to acknowledge then that we are willing to sacrifice the safety of some because we want other people to feel comfortable. Because it's not about their safety. It's about their comfort level. I wear an ally pin or an ally shirt or an ally button most places. And so people know, and I started doing that a few years ago, and I traveled all over the country. And there have been times that I have been places where people have said, I see that you have an ally pin. I don't feel really, will you talk to me for a minute, because this person is following me. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. I've been in a women's restroom in Las Vegas, and a lady was very concerned that there was, and these are her words, not mine, one of them transgenders in the bathroom. And we should do something. And I'm like, I'm just going to go compliment her on her shoes. I don't know that she's transgender. She's lovely. And the only way for you to know, ma'am, is for you to say, please go up there and please show me what's under that lovely skirt you're wearing. And she's like, I can't do that. I'm like, you're right. You can't. It's inappropriate. She's not doing anything but waiting in a line to use the restroom in a facility that had floor-to-ceiling doors on every stall. But she was going to go get a manager. And she didn't end up coming back, but I stood with that transgender woman, maybe transgender, maybe not. I never asked, because you know what? It wasn't my business. I didn't need to know. I did my business, I washed my hands, and I minded my own business. This bill does not do that. It is going to target more people, and we are very concerned about that, and I thank you for the time to testify. Thank you.
And thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions for the witness? Yes, Senator Bratton.
We said there's confusion in here, and that you don't know if you could, at a play, deem a certain bathroom or whatnot a different sex for that. The deal, this specifically says to share those spaces, so it's not it's not stating that you can't at an event. I mean, there's no ambiguity. It's saying that someone has to share with the opposite sex.
I'm confused, but I don't understand.
No, you gave the testimony, I guess. What's to be confused? You stated that you don't know if you could do that. It's stating that it's forcing or people having to share those facilities. There's nothing stating that you can't make it to where there's a makeshift, we're making this a dressing room during an event.
I guess that I read the word share as dual use. My goodness, sorry. As dual use. And so I guess you're reading share as simultaneously being in the restroom at the same time as somebody else.
Well, that's the whole point of this bill, is
right.
that my daughter doesn't have to go and share with a boy exposing his genitals in a locker room or a shower room or whatnot at an event.
I've been in a lot of restrooms, and I've never really noticed anybody's genitals. So they're not...
Well, in a locker room, are you telling me in a shower room after an event that doesn't? I mean, like Riley Gaines is a perfect example of, well, her own testimony. You can roll your eyes, but that was the testimony of the whole team, that he was in the shower room with his genitals, with getting an erection at some point by her testimony and the teammates. So yes,
I haven't heard
that's
that.
what this is about.
Well,
Putting a stop to that.
okay. Well, I still believe that
You think somebody should have that right to do that to my daughters or others' daughters?
I think the reality is that everybody in this room has shared a restroom at one point or another with a
No,
transgender person and never
in
known
a
it.
public setting, absolutely not.
I think that you're mistaken because I don't think that you know the sexuality or the gender or the sex, because gender and sex cannot be
You're
conflated.
telling me if
that they are
in
not.
a woman's locker room, seeing an exposed individual naked, that a little girl would know the difference between a boy and a girl at that point.
When I go into women's locker rooms, I use the area where I don't have to be.
That sounds
public.
good, but when you're in a mixed facility, in a shower room, a locker room setting, that it's completely impossible to do.
I think that. Well, I'm never going to convince you, and you're never going to convince me.
I mean, in the military, I know doing showers. It was around a little post where you had shower heads around a post. I know in the football locker room, that's how it is. That's how it is in all the locker rooms. So how can you say that you're not protecting kids?
Every locker room I've been in has had a private area. Every single one of them.
But that's not how they are.
Well, that's how some of them are because I've been in them. I did not imagine that. I have never been in a locker room that has not had a private area. At some point, it may not be a big private area, but there's been a place that people can choose in a locker room to be private.
That's not how in a high school locker room setting, that is not how they are.
My high school had private areas. When girls were menstruating, they didn't have to be out in front of everybody. We had a private space in our locker room.
Well,
and the boys' locker
and
rooms.
potential, and there may be accommodations, but that is not.
I'm just saying that this bill, the way I read it, and if I read it this way, I'm not special. Then other people might have read it this way. I think that the language is unclear with what shared means. It could mean simultaneous, or it could mean we share this committee room, but not necessarily simultaneously. Other committees share this room.
But there's no exposed genitalia or anything in these
that's
settings.
True, thankfully.
Correct? Well,
Yes.
exactly. But if there were, that would be highly inappropriate to do.
Right, and I'm saying that this bill needs some clarification.
Especially when we're dealing with minors and children. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions for the witness?
Thank you for your testimony. You know, I always have moments where I'm grateful that someday we will be able to look back and say, you know, this too shall pass. For so long, we heard horror stories. I think about all the atrocities that people who are gay experience for so many years. And thankfully, as one of our witnesses stated today, that we don't, most of us, no longer consider homosexuality to be some sort of mental health disorder, right? And I just say to my trans friends that this too shall pass. There will come a day when we will not have to be on this anymore. And thank you for your bravery again, for always being here and testifying for those kiddos that I know are deep within your heart. So thank you.
Yeah, from your mouth to God's ears. Thank you.
I'm just going to say it's just, again, focusing on, we can work on the language or we can do whatever, but let's go back to the original intent of what the senator is trying to do and try to help him get there. So thank you very much for your testimony. Is there
Thank you.
any other people here to testify in opposition?
Good morning, committee members. Sage Quorum on behalf of the American Civil Liberties Union of Missouri, here in opposition. Bills across the country that seek to regulate and force restroom use to align with narrow definitions of biology or conflations of sex and gender have faced a variety of legal challenges. SJR57 is a very broad bill, and it is a vague proposal that would impact Missourians of all ages across the state participate in daily life. Bills that seek to segregate restrooms or other spaces based on sex are not only unpopular in the public eye and detrimental to the health and well-being of transgender people, but they are hostile messages from the state that target our community members and families. I want to pull up the language of the bill 1 second because there's a part that hasn't been talked about today yet. This last line of the bill states, again, we've already heard in the last testimony some different interpretations of the word share. I would be curious to hear committee members and/or bill sponsor interpretation of this last line of the bill. Other spaces where biology, safety, and privacy are implicated. That feels very broad. I'm not sure what's being indicated there. Are we talking about healthcare facilities? Are we talking about where people that are receiving care that could certainly pertain to their biology, its safety, and privacy must only provide care to somebody of the same sex? Are we talking about ambulances? It's very unclear here what that shared space would mean and how that would be constrained. So I wanted to highlight that. But to end and to sort of summarize here based on what we've already heard today, this proposal is not different than other proposals in other states that are going to endanger the privacy and safety of Missourians. It is unclear how this bill would be enforced and in what spaces it would totally apply. But what is clear is that this would introduce more discrimination and invite legal challenges in our state. Thank you.
Any questions for this witness?
So I guess I'm not seeing the ambiguity in the final. I mean, because the premise of the bill is privacy and areas that demand privacy. Just as the last testimony we heard, if certain schools, have locker rooms or whatnot that have, places that are sectioned off to ensure privacy. I mean, that's basically what it's meaning, and ensuring that we're protecting the privacy of the youth. I mean, so I guess how is there ambiguity in that?
So my question is, in terms of this, it's just very broad. Other spaces where biology,
it's like where
safety,
there's an implication that we expect there to be privacy in the bathrooms out here for the ladies. We expect there to be privacy for the men. We expect there to be privacy in a shower room. We expect, and then there's an implicated privacy aspect to those areas, correct?
There is an implicated privacy aspect there. There's also an implicated privacy aspect in doctors' offices, in hospitals, in ambulances.
But it's
when we
not;
go
those
to
aren't
police
segregated
stations.
by sex, though.
Well, again, there is this question. Actually, in thinking about also how we provide care potentially to aging people, to folks with disabilities or different abilities that need assistance.
Yeah, but
in
we don't
using
have
those spaces.
we don't have in the ER. It's not segregated by men and women or male and female. It's where we do in shower rooms, where we do in men's prison, women prison. So you're really muddying the water when that's not the intent.
Well, I think then if part of this is to get to the intention and to talk about that, then this language in the bill does need to be clarified.
Well, just make sure that it's covering all the bases. If we didn't outline it specifically, is all that it's doing. Thank you.
You know what I'm going to keep echoing the sentiment that you use the word hostile messages. Well, I believe that hostile messages are being sent to kids or mothers who send their kids into bathrooms and are concerned about the safety of their kids, or high school or college people that are using the bathrooms or locker rooms or these spaces and are being assaulted or confronted or exposed to. And so that needs to be a part of the equation, right? That's the whole reason of the context of the legislation. So I appreciate your willingness to work with the senator here to try to make sure that those people also feel like we're not being hostile to them. So thank you. Any other people here to testify in opposition? When you're ready. Yeah.
Madam Chair, member of the committee, I know this has been a really emotional committee, so invite folks who have shared their stories just like take a deep breath.
Welcome to Family, Seniors, and Health.
Thank you. Been here before. My name is Katie Erker Lynch. I'm here on behalf of Promo. Had the opportunity to speak with you both before to go on record in opposition to Senate Joint Resolution 57. This bill is designed to make it impossible for transgender people to go about their daily lives. We've seen laws like this before, whether it was denying access to lunch counters, water fountains, schools, public swimming pools, restrooms, or marriage. The goal was always the same: to diminish a group's humanity and license public cruelty. That strategy failed then. It failed over and over again, and it will fail again. I don't know when, because people are standing up, telling their truth, and refusing to be erased. We've heard the bill sponsor and supporters say that this bill is about safety. We've also heard experts talk about where children are harmed, by whom, and that it's not in public restrooms and locker rooms. And we're also talking about prisons here. We're talking about any public space where biology is implicated. This bill isn't about safety. It's about humiliation. Stripping certain Missourians of human dignity and being able to just use the bathroom. In the United States, we have a shared belief affirmed by the U.S. Constitution and the Supreme Court about every person's right to privacy. And I think we can all agree that there's nothing more fundamentally private than an individual's right to use a restroom. Transgender people have been using restrooms aligned with their gender identity and expression forever, without incident. Trans and non-binary people have been using restrooms in this Capitol for decades without incident. What's changed is not the presence of trans people. What's changed is the belief that it's okay for an entire political apparatus to laser focus on a tiny minority of our population, for a presidential candidate to spend over $100 million in anti-trans advertisements in 1 month for a presidential election, and year after year obfuscate the real problems. I want to thank the people who are brave and courageous who showed up to speak their truth today. They've named several times, and so I won't go into it too much, that these laws are impossible to enforce, and that's for good reason. Policing people's bodies is anti-American and dangerous. If you can't safely or legally use a restroom, your time in any public space is really limited. And that's the point. These laws don't protect anyone. They push trans folks out of everyday life, shrinking their freedom and making them vulnerable to harassment and arrest. Appreciate your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question again. I'm going to keep saying this. Where I really, and we've had the great conversations. You and I had a great conversation in my office. Really appreciated it. Where is the line? I'd like to know where the line is, because there are people, and I don't think this is a secret, that are using that leverage to, there is such a thing as minority attracted people right now who are targeting our kids or whatever, going into these places where it is having a negative consequence. I don't think you're in support of that. I'm not in support of that. So again, we're trying to help the bill sponsor be able to get to a place where everyone is protected. That are we in a place now in our society where I guess there can be no common spaces when it comes to bathrooms and locker rooms or whatever, because there's just such a fear that we can't even coalesce around what that looks like. It's pretty sad, because those vulnerable places do need to be safe places, right? They need to be safe places for everybody. So just help us get there. If you're in opposition, then I'm going to assume that you're going to be talking to the bill sponsor to try to get in a place where we are.
As a parent of 3 children, I am intimately familiar with the anxieties and fears that keep us up at night, and my kids' safety is one of the #1 priorities. Driving here, I think about them constantly, so I welcome a conversation to talk about
what we might be able to do to protect children in Missouri. I don't think that this solution provides safety for kids.
Oh,
I think it puts many kids in more vulnerable positions, and I want to name that.
That will be probably a healthy and robust conversation.
Sure.
I, again, go back to you. We sit in this committee and hear all the time about vulnerable youth, how to help them, rape and incest, on and on and on. And yet we see on social media circumstances where, and Riley Gaines is one of those people, where people are exposing themselves. They are using those vulnerable places to do things that should not be done in those places. And so I think, again, going back to the senator's language, I think that's his intent. And so I appreciate the continued dialogue.
Welcome to a conversation with Senator.
Any questions for the witness? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else here to testify against? Any?
I missed my chance earlier. Might I drop a witness form off in favor of the bill?
Okay, sure.
I'm Todd Scott with the Attorney General's office. Just wanted to go on record in favor of SJR 57.
Okay, thank you. Anyone here to testify for informational purposes only? All right, thank you. Well, that concludes the hearing. Senator, any closing comments?
Yeah, if I could, I have 3 daughters, which is, we've talked about this often. There was a case in Virginia where a child was, a little girl was raped in a bathroom. The school district didn't tell the parents about it. It was a real problem. Those parents became domestic terrorists, according to the federal government, because they fought the school board on it. There are case after case in the prisons where biological males are are being moved to women's prisons and creating real problems. And I'll just read off a couple of those. February 2025, Colorado prisons decide to stick to court decree to force biological males into women's prisons. September 2024, formerly incarcerated woman sues for repeatedly being sexually assaulted by transgender female. July 2024, Biden judicial nominee sent a trans male rapist to female prison, arguing safety concerns were overblown. Now sources say he is exposing himself to the inmates. June 2024, a Newsweek article about Biden's DOJ putting incarcerated women at risk. And then in June 2024, a 6'2" trans woman fooled authorities and transferred to a women's prison and allegedly raped 2 inmates. So to say that people aren't at risk is a falsehood, and I just want to protect these vulnerable areas. And I think we should be able to, in a society like ours, get to a conclusion on that. Thanks.
And our goal, Senator, is not to target the whole with a broad stroke, but this is happening. And so thank you again for being willing to come and bring this bill forward and for the robust conversation. With that, that concludes our hearing for SJR 57, and that concludes the hearing on families, seniors, and health. Thank you.